Nuclear war would create a lasting rift in human history, splitting the time before and after the devastating post-war apocalypse. Picture this: massive fires raging across immense areas, engulfing tens of thousands of square kilometers, and tragically claiming the lives of hundreds of millions in mere hours. But the horror doesn't end there. Picture a chilling aftermath where nuclear winter sets in, threatening billions of lives and pushing our civilization to the brink of collapse. But how exactly does this nightmare unfold, and what are its grim consequences? Here's how it goes down. When a nuclear weapon goes off, it unleashes a blistering bubble of gas hotter than the sun, setting ablaze everything within kilometers of ground zero in an instant. This fiery bubble expands at breakneck speed, looming large in the sky above its target and unleashing a destructive shockwave that wreaks havoc far and wide. Think of it like knocking over a bunch of dominoes, only these dominoes burst into flames, engulfing everything and everyone in their path in a worst-case scenario firestorm. In the aftermath of the blast, a massive mushroom cloud hangs ominously over the devastation, casting a grim shadow over its destructive aftermath. But as hours pass, a more ominous threat emerges. The fires, devouring cities, forests, and fields, heat the surrounding air to such extreme levels that they create their own weather systems, complete with swirling winds and microclimates. This heated air and smoke rise, drawing in fresh air from all around, which only serves to fuel the flames further. It's a relentless cycle of destruction, ensuring that the aftermath of a nuclear explosion is every bit as horrifying as the initial impact. This cycle gives rise to an updraft, forming a colossal pyrocumulonimbus cloud that carries soot and aerosols from the inferno high into the stratosphere. Normally, the soot from a large fire would be washed away by rain, but a pyrocumulonimbus cloud can soar to altitudes far beyond the reach of rain clouds. Once above the tropopause, there's virtually no weather to clear away the soot, allowing it to linger in the atmosphere for years on end. Now, if this were to unfold in a single city, it would undoubtedly be a tragic occurrence, though somewhat contained in its impact. However, in the grim event of a full-blown nuclear conflict, where nations heed the chilling logic of mutually assured destruction, they could unleash hundreds or even thousands of nuclear warheads in one fell swoop. This would result in countless firestorms, spewing up to 150 million tons of soot, enough to fill a skyscraper, directly into the stratosphere. In the days and weeks that follow, this soot begins its grim descent, blanketing the Earth at high altitudes. Absorbing sunlight far above the surface, it acts as a barrier, preventing crucial sunlight from reaching the ground below. But let's be clear, this isn't some scene out of science fiction where the sky suddenly darkens and the sun disappears. Winter, as we know it, hinges on sunlight reaching the ground, a delicate balance. And now, with a significant reduction in sunlight, yesterday's normalcy becomes today's harbinger of nuclear winter. Understanding the severity of nuclear winter is an ongoing area of study, heavily contingent on one key factor: the intensity of the infernos. How many firestorms erupt due to the blistering heat of the explosions? This varies depending on a slew of factors, from the materials composing a city to the time of year, proximity to forests, and more. Thus, it's crucial to acknowledge that we're operating under certain assumptions. Now, here's the glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. Nuclear winter isn't an eternal sentence, nor does it signify the onset of a new ice age. Its impact on the climate only persists as long as the soot hangs in the air, typically around a decade until it disperses and temperatures stabilize. However, the flip side is that this abrupt climate shift brings about immediate repercussions within a matter of weeks, throwing our climate system into disarray at a pace unmatched by any living organism's ability to adapt. Suddenly, our seasons go haywire. Winters stretch longer, while summers shrink and chill, or, in the worst-case scenario, vanish altogether. This shift also means less evaporation over oceans, resulting in diminished rainfall and the looming threat of widespread droughts. This poses a significant challenge because, at the end of the day, our food supply hinges on the life-giving energy of the sun. Without adequate summers and ample rainfall, growing seasons would dwindle or vanish completely. The majority of humanity calls the mid-latitudes home, a region known for its optimal temperature for our species. It's not just pleasant, it's where the plants we rely on for sustenance flourish best. Much of our food supply comes from a select few highly efficient crops, primarily grown in agriculturally fertile regions like the U.S. Great Plains or Ukraine. From these global breadbaskets, staple foods such as wheat and rice are exported and distributed worldwide. In the grim event of a full-scale nuclear war, temperatures in the mid-latitudes could plummet below freezing for several years. In such frigid conditions, crops cannot survive, and the world's breadbaskets would suddenly become desolate. If food production were to collapse, it's likely that food producers would significantly raise prices or even cease exports altogether, assuming they can still cultivate their fields. Estimating the maximum population the Earth can support is relatively straightforward. You tally up all the calories we can produce and divide them by the average caloric intake required for survival. If there are more people than available calories, that surplus disappears within a matter of weeks. Humanity possesses only a scant few weeks' worth of crops and food supply, which wouldn't suffice to withstand such a drastic reduction in production. Yet, the climate isn't the only piece of the puzzle. Modern industrialized agriculture operates as a complex system, relying on functional supply chains to transport large quantities of industrially produced fertilizer and chemicals for weed and pest control. Moreover, it necessitates a myriad of specialized modern machinery for tasks ranging from plowing and sowing to harvesting and distribution. In the aftermath of a nuclear conflict, especially if the nations responsible for food production were embroiled in the war, critical resources such as fuel, fertilizer, and machine parts could become scarce due to the destruction of vital infrastructure like oil refineries and ports. This would only compound the already compromised global food production. Now that we've painted the picture, let's dive into what science has to say about the potential conflicts that could unfold. Currently, scientists are contemplating two primary scenarios regarding the potential for nuclear winter: a clash between India and Pakistan, and one involving the US and Russia. The more probable scenario involves a smaller-scale nuclear exchange between India and Pakistan, utilizing relatively low-yield weapons. Even in such a relatively mild scenario, the initial detonations would lead to the tragic deaths of approximately 27 million people, an appalling toll surpassing the casualties of the entire World War I. While the ensuing fires may not trigger a full-blown nuclear winter, they could instigate a mild nuclear autumn. Nevertheless, even this scenario would significantly disrupt the climate, posing a threat to global agriculture and potentially resulting in the starvation of up to 250 million people worldwide. Unfortunately, the escalating tensions between India and Pakistan have fueled an arms race, with both nations bolstering the number and potency of their warheads. The next phase of escalation could entail a conflict involving hundreds of nuclear weapons, resulting in the devastation of numerous major population centers and the loss of over 100 million lives. Such a cataclysmic event would undoubtedly trigger a nuclear winter, severely impacting global agriculture and having the available calories for humanity. The resulting famine could claim the lives of as many as 2 billion people, equivalent to 1 in 4 of the world's current population. However, the most dire scenario looms large in the form of a full-scale global conflict involving NATO nations and either Russia or China, both of which are actively bolstering their nuclear arsenals. In a clash between former, future, and current superpowers, thousands of nuclear weapons could be unleashed, heralding an unparalleled catastrophe. In a scenario featuring approximately 4,400 nuclear weapons, an estimated 360 million lives would be extinguished in an instant. There's truly no precedent in history that can match the death and devastation that would follow. It's akin to humanity dropping an asteroid on itself. The nuclear winter ensuing from such an apocalyptic war would decimate human calorie production by up to 90%. Not only would nearly all of our agriculture suffer immediate and catastrophic losses, but the climate itself would require at least a decade to recuperate. Given that such a conflict would specifically target the regions responsible for the majority of the world's food production, recovery would pose a monumental challenge compared to other conflicts. Within a mere 2 years, the global death toll from starvation could skyrocket to around 5 billion. In mid-latitude countries like Russia, China, Canada, the US, and much of Europe, only a fraction of the population might endure. Humanity, as we presently understand it, would undergo irreversible transformation. While no location would be completely immune, certain nations in the southern hemisphere might have a better chance of weathering the storm while the rest of the world crumbles. It's noteworthy that all nuclear-armed states are situated in the northern hemisphere. Hence, countries like Australia, New Zealand, and Argentina could potentially fare better for several reasons. Their exposure to nuclear winter might be less severe, they boast substantial livestock that wouldn't be as impacted as crops, and they might prioritize domestic food security over exports, provided they aren't overwhelmed by other starving nations desperate for resources. It's undeniable that the world would become incredibly inhospitable for an extended period, with the total death toll post-nuclear winter impossible to accurately predict. In the worst-case scenario, human civilization could collapse entirely, hurling survivors back thousands of years into a world marred by scars and graves. As they painstakingly strive to reconstruct civilization amidst the ruins, the question arises: would they ever consider building nuclear weapons again? One thing remains abundantly clear: we must exhaust every avenue to ensure nuclear weapons never see the light of day again. The devastation they bring knows no limits, and the risks they pose to humanity are simply too immense to disregard. It's imperative that we pursue global cooperation, disarmament, and peaceful conflict resolution. Only through united efforts and a steadfast commitment to diplomacy can we avert the horrors of nuclear war and safeguard the future of our planet. Let's glean wisdom from the past and tirelessly strive towards a world where the specter of nuclear annihilation is a mere relic of history, and where peace and prosperity reign supreme.